Salutations Rangers, General Bradley 101 back at you with some more lore. And in today's video, ladies and gentle people, we are talking about the White Scars, the 5th Astati Legione. So, if you're brand spanking new to 40k, firstly, welcome! Thank you for coming. This universe is kind of fucked, not gonna lie, but in a good way. So, the White Scars are essentially the 5th Legion of Space Marines. Space Marines being genetically augmented enhanced super soldiers created by the Emperor of Mankind, and they fight for the Imperium of Man. There's your little disclaimer. So, in today's video, we're gonna be going over the White Scars as a whole. So, when I wanted to do this video, I wanted to cover the entirety of the White Scars. You know, like every battle, everything that they've done. Like, you know, I'm gonna cover everything.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
I then proceeded to find out how much lore about the White Scars there were. I have enough lore here to make at least 4 videos worth of stuff. 5, knowing me, because I would like to waffle on like a goddamn Waffle House. So, here is just a basic overview, as this is supposed to be. If you guys want, I will actually have a community post if you guys want just this standalone video, or do you want different videos on different topics. And yeah, talk down in the community post. It'll be linked down below, I think, if I can do that. But yeah, otherwise comment. But enough willing and waffling, let's talk about the White Scars. So, first thing first, what are the White Scars, or rather, who are the White Scars? As I said before, the White Scars are the 5th Legions of the Legiones Astartes, that being the Space Marines. First thing first, we are just going to go over them out of universe, and then we're going to go over them in universe. There are Space Mongolians. They are very, very heavily inspired by Mongolia, but something that people don't realize is that they're actually based on the Yuan dynasty, or the Yuan splinter part of China. When the last heir of Genghis Khan died, they split up into 4 different parts. One of those being the Yuan dynasty, which ruled over China. And these guys are actually based off them because while most people think of Mongols, you think of steppe nomads, dirty, grungy, nasty nonsense full of blood and murder and death, and that word that rhymes with grape. Which, you know, they were, to be fair. The Yuan dynasty, often referred to as Yuan China, because it was so heavily influenced by China. They were very much this unique idea of a blending of Mongol and Chinese cultures, and the White Scars represent that, in that while most people think of the White Scars as nothing more than bloodthirsty tribesmen, they're in fact actually very cultured and sophisticated, and the administration on Chogoris, their home planet mind you, is incredibly sophisticated. It's, like I said, they're the Yuan dynasty. Now, I don't know if GW did this on purpose. If they did, this is literally because GW does one thing really well. They're very good at taking historical anything really, historical events, people, archetypes, cultures, whatever you want to call them, and inserting them into 40k. They are absolutely beautiful at doing that. I don't know if they meant to do it, but if they literally meant to describe the White Scars as an analogy for Yuan China, and how in universe people think of the White Scars as nothing more than murderous butchers, but in reality they're actually extremely cultured administrators who classify poetry and art and calligraphy as some of the highest traits that they can have. Just well done, GW. Masterstroke of the highest caliber, just really well done. But yeah, that's what the White Scars are. Yuan Dynasty China. The Mongols, specifically Yuan Dynasty China, translated into Space Marines. Their whole shtick is fast attack. Instead of horses, you have motorbikes and land speeders and jet bikes, and you have power swords. And if you love that Mongolian aesthetic, that's these guys. They're very plain, very simple. Also, a lot of their stuff is very Mongolian language, Chogorian, very, very Mongolian inspired, and yeah, it's literally the Yuan dynasty in space with Space Marines. So if that's your bag, you're gonna absolutely love and adore the White Scars. Also, Jaghatai Khan is so cool. He's so cool. I mean, yeah, their main dude is called the Khan because, you know, GW can't be too original now. But there's your brief little overview. If the White Scars are for you and you want to learn more, stick around. If not, really, whatever you want to do, you do it. But if you are curious and interested, let's crack on with the full lore. So, the White Scars, like all legions, were birthed on Terra by the Emperor of Mankind. And the White Scars had their population drawn from, originally, the massive nomadic mechanical crawlers from the Thulian Basin. So the Thulian Basin were ice wastes. They were just absolutely barren plains. Again, kind of like the steppes of Mongolia. And they were actually one of the first legions to see combat, you know, alongside the Emperor's Thunder Warriors. But the 5th Legion the White Scars, but they weren't called the White Scars, it was called the 5th Legion at that time, they weren't ever really deployed in full force. So rather, they were divided into small squads, 15 dozen Astartes maybe, and their main goal was to find enemies. So their goal was two-purpose. One, find the bad guy, alright? Two, either kill him if you can, because remember these are still Astartes, they can easily wipe out a company of men, just 10 of them. Or if you cannot kill them, if the force is too big, what you do is you then deploy guerrilla tactics. You bleed them, partisan tactics, you disrupt the logistics and whatnot, and you prepare them for the main push. And it's interesting because the White Scars were incredibly involved, very much so in the early days, because they only had a few hundred warriors at their disposal. However, most people don't really know about that in actual Imperial records, because what would happen is by the time that the main army with the supply and the logistics and the remembrances being essentially military journalists in 40k, by the time they got to the actual fight, the White Scars had buggered off onto the next guy to try and murder. Speed is key with these fellas, and because of that they moved so fast that the records couldn't keep up with them. Eventually, after Terra was, conquered by the Emperor, reconquered depending on how you want to put it, they then became launched into the stars. By the end of the Unification Wars, they were at about full strength, give or take. Well, I say full strength, they had several thousand men, and they became known as the Star Hunters, because what they would do is that they would take small sections of their fleet and they would attach them to larger sections as scouts, and they would go out and they would scout the area and literally do exactly what they did on Terra, except instead of a few squads of Astartes taking out one fortress, you have a few ships of Astartes taking out a planet. Their role didn't change any way, shape or form, and they literally just expanded. It went from a little bit to a lot. And it was interesting because they didn't stop at all. They didn't stop for resupply. They didn't come back to their ships. They just kept on moving from planet to planet to planet. And if that particular expedition force stopped, they would attach themselves to another expedition force or just go on their own. The reason why they could do that is because of the people they were drawn from the ice wastes of the Thulian Basin, were extremely self-sufficient. And they, the Star Hunters, were able to go massive amount of time without resupply, even for Astartes. These guys just didn't stop. But because of that, people forgot about them. Literally, the remembrances and whatnot didn't record them. Their deeds, their records, they became known as Terra's Forgotten Sons. And unlike the Iron Warriors, who, were bitter about this, the White Scars, they took a silent pride in this and we know what we need to do. And some people credit that the, Great Crusade was only able to expand that much because the Star Hunters kept on finding new and new things. Fun fact, these guys were the ones who found Horus on Chthoniya. And funnily enough, when they found it, they were like, this is a den of serpents which needs to be destroyed. And Horus saw that and he was like, this is before Erebus was a and stabbed him. Before Erebus was a dick and stabbed him. I can't say that word on YouTube. So he was like, oh, it's fine. Lol. Oh, my nephews, they're funny. Irony, huh? Can be a real bitch sometimes. But the problem with that is, as they kept on going and kept on moving and discovering, they never stopped. And even with Astartes, the Legion slowly began to die out because they couldn't recruit losses. They had to abandon, ships because they didn't have anything to fix them. It was all just, you keep on running at full throttle 100%, you're gonna burn out regardless of who you are. And for a long time, many people thought that's how the White Scars, the Star Hunters rather, would die out in a blaze of glory, burning brightly, and they would be forgotten as the Legion that ran itself into the ground. And that probably would have been the case. Psych! If not for this mad lad, aka Genghis Khan, but in space, the Primarch of the 5th Legion, Jaghatai Khan, the Khagan of the Great Plains. Khagan, mind you, meaning Khan of Khans, or King of Kings, and he was found near what was known as the planet of Chagorus. Chagorus is literally a continent size, eastern plains. It's literally Mongolia, but continent size. Oh, by the way, they were known as pioneer companies, because remember how I said the 5th Legion, they separated into different companies? These were known as pioneer companies, and they could be anywhere from 800 all the way up to 3,000 men. So we're not going to cover too much onto Mr. Jaghatai here, who have his own separate episode if you guys want it, but he landed on Chagorus. And he basically did what Genghis Khan did. He got adopted by his dad, or adoptive dad, and basically a tribe, an opposing tribe, came to raid as they do, and they killed his dad. So what Jaghatai Khan did is that he wiped the tribe off the face of the map, burnt everything, stole their cows and their sheep, and sold the rest into slavery. And he basically offered this to everyone else. He was like, hey, join or die. like Genghis Khan, and he united everyone. And then he got to not China, and they were elite armies, disciplined. So what the Khan did is that he did what Genghis Khan did. He captured one army, got the siege equipment, conquered everything else, and he conquered the planet. It's literally Genghis Khan translated into 40k. But it was at this time that he was then found by his sons and at his palace at Quanzhou. So I'm pronouncing this with a Chinese accent, even though this may be Mongolian. I don't really know. I don't know Mongolian. So if this is supposed to be Mongolian, please let me know. Or it's just some amalgamation of nonsense. You know, you can just let me know on that. So at Quanzhou, which was his palace, which is actually where their fortress monastery, their main base, he swore allegiance to the emperor and was given command of the 5th Legion. And fun fact, he spent about 10 years, a full decade, gathering all his peeps and rebuilding them and reorganizing them. And by the end of it, he had a full 80,000 men. And it's interesting because the reason that they're called the White Scars, and the reason why they have the Thunderbolt as their marking, so the Thunderbolt is actually twofold. It's a scar and the Thunderbolt. The Thunderbolt representing how fast they go, but more the ritual scars, because there was something known as the Blooding, in which he gathered the 50,000 Marines of the Star Hunters, and they all took ritual scars across their face, which is what the Talskar tribe, which is Jaghatai's Khan's tribe, was the Talskars. It was something that they did. So to bridge the gap between the Terran-born and the Tragorian-born, they all had this scar. And since they were white, the Remembranters saw them like, hey, your color is white, you guys have scars, the White Scars. The Legion didn't actually choose that name for them, but they didn't mind it, so they became the White Scars. And it was very interesting because we'll notice this as we go along with different legions. Two things tend to happen. One, a legion is either changed dramatically by its Primarch or it's improved by its Primarch. In this case, Jaghatai Khan just improved what the White Scars were already doing. And then two, we see that there's a split between the Terran-borns and the Homeworld-borns at the Primarch unless the Primarch does something. Sanguinius did this, Vulcan did this, Gilliman did this. They found a way to bridge the gap and to make them one, you know. And this ritual scarring of Jaghatai Khan and his men, it gave them a new identity. They were now the White Scars. Also, they all got a new Chagorian name, and in some cases they used their old name as their surname. So for example, if the old Marine's name was Tellern, right, and he became a White Scar, he would be given the name Ogle, so he'd become Ogle Terran. It's such a small thing, but even these are Astartes, people tend to forget that one, they're still kind of human, and two, that they're absolutely not human. But here, we see the very human aspect in them. But after 10 years of that, Jaghatai Khan took 80,000 of his warriors and they began assaulting everywhere. Mostly they fought orcs of the Sanganmar and the Vorgeist. They love fighting orcs, and they used brutal hit and run tactics. Like, literally, we'll touch more on the combat tactics when we talk about them a little more, but their whole thing is just incredibly speed, and they're Mongols. And a big thing that changed with them is that they were no longer deployed individually. The Khan wanted all of his sons together in one place to be, you know, as one effective force. And the White Scars continued to earn much glory, but even with the rediscovery of Jaghatai Khan, they were still largely neglected by the historians of the Imperium. You know, like I said, most of them akin them as savages to Angron or Rus, but unlike the latter, who were just Vikings in space and actually savages, and the former, who were bloodthirsty maniacs, they were actually very learned in craftsmanship, art, philosophy, and they were far more disciplined and professional. Like I said, they're based off the Yuan Chinese. It was an amalgamation of the Mongolian tactics, but also the discipline and the administration that China naturally had. So that's them from Terra, Post-Heresy, Pre-Heresy. Now we're talking about the heresy itself. So when the heresy kicked off, Jaghatai and his men had spent several years in a campaign against the orcs of the Chondak system. Like I said, they liked orcs. However, the Alpha Legion had done some shenanigans and actually prolonged it by, you know, fucking around with something. God knows what the goddamn Alpha Legion does.
En episodios anteriores.
They cause raining snakes!
What?
Hallelujah! It's raining snakes! However, when the news of Horus and the Drop Site Massacre arrived, they got a message from Rogul Dawn who was like, you need to come back to Terra immediately. And then the Khan then was contacted by Russ, who had just returned from burning Prospero and stealing Magnus's goddamn anime collection. Because let's be honest, Russ is a goddamn hypocrite. He calls people weebs and watches anime. I would know. I'm one. Not a weeb. I'm like the who complains and calls people weebs even though he watches anime. I don't actually watch anime that much. Like, I watch like under 20, you know. Demon Slayer is great though. Love Demon Slayer. Let me know what's your favorite anime down below, and if you don't watch anime, what's like an anime that you have been tempted to watch? However, the Alpha Legion then assaulted Russ's Space Wolves, and they were defeated at the planet called Yarnat. However, Jaghatai left the Space Wolves on their own because he didn't know what was going on, and he had to worry about his own warp storms because he was caught in warp storms caused by Erebus and all his nonsense. I mean, Lorgar and Erebus. So he had to leave him. Now, granted, he probably could have done something, but at the same time, he didn't really know what the hell was going on, so he was like, you know, I need to find out what the hell's going on. And Russ did murder Magnus and his son, so, karma's a bitch, Russ. However, he eventually got to Terra, and it took him about 5 years to get there, and they managed to break the Alpha Legion blockade, and they actually ended up on Prospero. And the reason why he had returned to Prospero, because he wanted to decide exactly what the hell happened. You know, because as I said before, he was hearing different stories from about 3 different people, so he was like, okay, what's going on? But when he got to Prospero, it was wrecked by the Space Wolves. There was nothing there. The only thing him and his men found were the psychic ghosts of the slain 1,000 suns, and they soon appeared. And in fact, he was soon confronted by an ethereal projection of Magnus the Red, who obviously told him to not trust the Emperor and join Horus. However, in the end, Jaghatai then shattered the shard of Magnus with his sword. And then the Khan was like, okay, what do I do now? Then Mortarion showed up, and the Khan and his Keshig, and Mortarion and his Death Shroud, those being the Terminator Elite, then had a bit of a scuffle. Meanwhile, the White Scars and Death Guards began to engage each other in space, and it was at this time that the Legion faced an attempted coup led by Turgan Khan and Hashik Noyan Khan to take command of the White Scars fleet while it was at Prospero and join the forces of Horus. And it was interesting because, I touched on this earlier, there was actually a rift forming, cultural tensions between the Terran-born and the Shogorians. The Shogorians were completely loyal to Jaghatai Khan, but the Terran-born still had great loyalty to Horus Lupercal, who had actually helped them a little bit and, you know, and been there for them while there were still these Star Hunters. So while the Khan didn't try to bridge that gap, didn't work out well. However, thanks to the effort of Ebon Keshig, he was able to lead a boarding party onto the Sword Storm, which was a ship of the White Scars, and battle the traitors until Jaghatai arrived. After that, Mortarion and Death Guard peaced out, and the surviving traitors within the Scars were condemned to the Sagyar Manzan suicide units. You know, you would get your atonement through death. And then, for the next 4 years, the White Scars then found themselves trapped far from Terra. Like I said, warp storms caused by Lorgar and his nonsense had cut off their thing, and they decided, you know, right, hit and run tactics. Faced with no other choice, they were like, you know, like, we're just going to do this and just try and find a way. But eventually, you know, the traitors began to build a way around it, these Astartes and whatnot, and it was really, really, really bad. It got to the point where they lost a full fifth, 20% of the White Scars Legion during those 4 years of combat. But it was at the key battle of Callum Gate and the death of Quinza that the Khan had decided that, you know, they'd had enough, and they eventually found a way through to Terra, that being the Dark Glass, which is an artifact, and through the sacrifice of their chief Stormseer, Targan Yasugi, the Stormseer being their equivalent of a librarian, they were able to find a portal into the Webway that allowed them to reach Terra. The Webway being a sub-dimension between realities. Quinza, as we mentioned before, was the leader of the Keshig, that being the Terminator Elite. So, like how I said before, it took them about 5 years to reach Terra. This is what happened during those 5 years. Then we come to the actual Battle of Terra. Now, during the Siege of Terra itself, the White Scars fought alongside the Blood Angels and the Imperial Fist against the traitors. And they fought not as stationary defenders, but rather as, you know, best defense to good offense. They launched several hit-and-run assaults during the siege, and when the Inner Palace was breached, the White Scars led an attack to retake the Lion's Gate spaceport. Jaghatai Khan ordered the assembly of the Legion, the Skyplate, and pulled together elements of hundreds of tank regiments, forming the Armored Division. So the Skyplate was a massive orbital fortress that was essentially provided cover for the assaulting Marines. It was a giant space station, basically. And using that, they formed the 1st Armored Division. And through that, they were able to launch an assault from the Colossi Gate on, as we mentioned before, the spaceport known as Lion's Gate. And they actually ended up fighting the Death Guard again, and Jaghatai ended up beating Mortarion and banishing him to the warp, though he was pretty done after this. Now, with the White Scars under Ebon Khan and Jiangsai Khan, as well as Ganzan Noyan Khan, fortified the spaceport and held firm until the Ultramarines, Dark Angels, and Space Wolves got to Terra. So for those who don't know, Jaghatai Khan is literally top 3 best swordsmen of all the Primarchs. That dude can throw down. So that's the Battle of Terra. Post-Heresy, the White Scars adopted the Codex Astartes, that breaking them into several chapters. So shortly after this, the White Scars returned to their home planet, but found that the Dark Eldar had done several raids there, and Jaghatai fought many battles against them during the Great Scouring. However, they had actually stolen a bunch of people as slaves, and the Khan was like, right, I'm taking a few of you, we're going into the Dark Webway, we're going into Commorragh, we're going to get our people back, and he hasn't been seen since. To this day, the White Scars really hate the bloody Dark Eldar, but to be honest, no one likes the Dark Eldar. Not even the Dark Eldar likes the Dark Eldar, and that's a disappearance of the Khan. Fun fact, all the Primarchs of the Loyalists just disappeared, pretty much, or were incapacitated by some reason. Gillidan is the only Primarch who is back currently. As of now, they were involved in several engagements throughout the years, and at the return of Guilliman, they have accepted the Primaris Astartes and the units, and they can to do what they've always done. Go fast and hit like a motherfucker. So yeah, that is the basic history of the White Scars. They were involved in several engagements between the end of the Heresy and the return of Guilliman, but we won't be going over that. If you guys want like a battle section of the White Scars, let me know down in the comments below. Right, the White Scars were organized into what were known as brotherhoods. Now, brotherhoods were basically built up of, chapters. Could be about 1,000 side, give or take. Few thousand, 1 to 2,000 give or take, and they were combined into about roughly 5 hordes. These hordes came about 5 to 20,000 marines depending, and each brotherhood, or known as Mingan in the Chorchen language, was mechanized. Till this day they are still mechanized. Primarily jetbikes, land speeders, and bikes. They do have some armor, but their armor is either extremely toned down and stripped down variants. They like speed and moving fast. They don't really have any destroyer carters or devastator marines, but there was one exception known as the Dark Sons of Death, or the Karaglorlanar. I probably butchered that, but sorry for that. And that's during the Heresy. Now, as for this stance on dreadnoughts, till this day they do indeed have dreadnoughts. The problem is they're a very, very small amount, and they are known as the Ulhan Solban, or the Gardens of the Morning and Evening Stars, and they are used specifically to guard the gene seed tides of the White Scars on Chogoris itself. Now, after the split up, each brotherhood was divided to chapters being about 1,000 strong, and currently there are 10 companies of the White Scars, and they are as follows. So we have the first company, known as the Spearpoint Brethren. Regular veteran companies trained to fight in the usual types of ancient power armor. Again, they're rarely fielded as one single formation, but rather distributed as as the name implies, the spear tip. And they are commanded by the first captain, Subudoi Khan, known as the Master of the War Council. And like I said, they are veteran squads, Terminator squads, etc. They're the first company, they're the Spear. We then have the second company, the Fire Fist Brotherhood, and this is named after a ritual in Chogoris where inductees need to climb into what is known as the Mouth of Flame and steal its heart from a pearl of molten crystal. Very esoteric and whatnot, but they are a speed-based formation, and they are led by Captain Buratai Khan, known as the Master of Law, and these are your stock standard, pretty simple company. They have a company of veterans, battle line squads, close support squads, fire squads, etc. Dreadnoughts, transport vehicles, very simple. We then have the third company, the Eagle Brotherhood, led by the Master of the Hunt, known as Kor'sarro Khan, and this is special because the White Scars will have a hit list of people that they need to kill, and they'll give to this guy, and he has to go and kill the leader of these guys specifically. So if someone does something bad to the White Scars, Kor'sarro Khan will make a list of it, and he will go and kill them, grab their head, and stick it on a pike outside the palace or fortress monastery of the White Scars. Pretty badass. We then come to the fourth company, known as the Talwar Brotherhood, and these guys are specialized in close quarters combat assault, specifically blade. They know something known as Kinjal daggers and curved chainswords, and they are led by Captain Jogatiri Khan, known as the Master of Blades. We then have the fifth company, the Stormwrath Brotherhood, and these go to war alongside the Stormseers. Stormseers being the White Scars version of librarians, psychics, magic people. They field large amounts of whirlwind artillery, whirlwind being a rocket launching, firing artillery vehicle, and they have a large number of psykers in their company, and the psykers often use psychic concealment on them, and they are led by Captain Hibogin Khan, the Master of Spirits. We then have the sixth company, the Hawk's Eye Brotherhood, and they specialize in large amounts of tanks and transports to transport intercessor squads and tactical squads, stock standard basic line infantry, and they are led by Captain Urchin Khan, the Master of Shields. and these guys actually have battle tanks. Normally, tanks aren't really found, but these seem to be the unit that does actually have tanks. Normally, dreadnoughts are a tank, so these guys actually have battle line tanks. And we have the 7th Company, the Planeswalker Brotherhood. They specialize in aerial warfare and they utilize a large amount of aircraft. They are led by Uljan Khan, the Master of the Watch, and they have access to gunships. We then have the 8th Company, the Blood Rider Brotherhood. They specialize in close quarters combat assault and utilizes a large amount of assault quads and inceptor squads. So these are your fast-moving, hard-hitting melee infantry. They are led by Captain Vorkhan Khan, the Master of Steeds. We then have the 9th Company, known as the Stormbolt Brotherhood. These guys specialize in heavy firepower and defensive warfare. They utilize a large amount of Devastators and Hellblasters. They rarely go into the field like the 1st as a single unit, but are distributed towards the White Scars in various forces. So again, they're the heavy fire support. They have a large amount Devastator squads, Hellblaster squads, Dreadnoughts, transport vehicles. They are led by Captain Khagan Khan, the Master of Bows. And finally, we have the 10th Company, the Windspeaker Brotherhood. These are the dedicated scout force of the chapter, and also they field the Vanguard Primaris Space Marines. They are led by Captain Jaghatai Khan, the Master of Braves. And like I said, they have a large amount of scout squads, spite squads, and scouting things. So those are the current 10 companies in this era specifically. But now let's talk about what makes them so unique. So there are a lot of unique units to the old legions, but a lot of them are said to be Heresy era only. The reason why is a real world reason, the fact that GW can't field those units in 40k because they're for 30k specifically. But let's be honest, if you have jet bikes, you're going to use jet bikes. And it's kind of bullshit to think that a first founding chapter does not have access to technology enough to maintain them. So I call nonsense on that. To me, these guys still exist. They're still usable. And look, hell, you can, if you want to play them badly in 40k, you can just name drop them and use a different spirit thing. I mean, come on. So firstly, we have the Stormseers. Now, the Stormseers are the unique librarians of the White Scars. And as the name implies, they have a lot of stuff to do with storms and storm powers, concealment through mist, calling down lightning strikes. And these play a very important part in the whole idea of the White Scars. They're kind of like shamans in a sense. They're the old men, they're the wise men. They serve both as a librarian purpose, but also more of a, elder role. Because remember, the White Scars are based on Mongolian or Chagorian, and they very much are, these are the ancients, these are the old men. We need to respect them. And then we have the Keshig. The Keshig are the Terminator elite. They are the bodyguard of Pre-Jaghatai Khan. Now they're the bodyguard of the current Khan, or the chapter master of the White Scars. These are the elite of the elite. And then we have the Golden Keshig. These are the elite, but instead of the Keshig, which are foot-mounted in Terminator, these guys are clad in artificer armor and they ride jet bikes. We then have the Ebon Keshig. So when a White Scar makes an oopsie and he wants to atone for it, he is then given Terminator armor in black, known as the Ebon Keshig. And they are designed and made for full frontal assaults against vanguard positions. So against sieges, spear point breakthroughs, and if they survive, they're like, you know what, good, you've done good work, you've done good job, you're alright. And the debt is forgiven and it's like it never happened. We then have the Kyzagan Assault Speeder. This is a special type of assault speeder utilized by the White Scars. It's developed from the Javelin and it was able to keep pace with the swift brotherhoods of the White Scars. It still had a lot of firepower. It was mounted with a Caris pattern assault cannon and hunter-killer missiles and Reaper autocannons. It was both more heavily armed and far more faster than the stock standard land speeds of the time. We then have the Falcon's Claws. The Falcon's Claws were a special formation and they were the scouts of the White Scars. They were equipped with chameleon recon armor and they often went into battle with twin pairs of lightning claws, Falcon's Claws. They also had power fists, thunder handers, hand flamer, plasma pistols, bolt pistols, power weapons, and volkites, as well as grenades. They would do long range scouting missions, they would ambush, and they would harry, hit and run tactics, they would assassinate people, and their main goal would be eliminate key commanders of the enemy, as well as to mark out there were scouts of the scouts. Pretty good at scouting. And then we have the aforementioned Kor'sarro. I'm butchering that so bad. These were the destroyer cadre of the White Suns, known as the Dark Sons of Death. Again, these are probably succeeded by the 9th Company, the Stormbolt Brotherhood. But we don't really know that for certain. Yep, those are the notable units of the White Scars. As for notable characters, well, there's plenty, but we already touched on one of them, Kor'sarro Khan. The the master of the hunt. He, like I said, he's the hitman. If someone does something bad to the White Scars, he's gonna find them, he's gonna kill them, and like I said, grab their head and literally put it on a spike. And he calls hunts. That's what his stuff is specifically to do. And their current chapter master, guy by the name of Jubal Khan, he was actually captured by the Dark Eldar and tortured. So people aren't really sure if his mental state is 100%, which is fair because, you know, the Dark Eldar are kind of fucked up. To summarize, the White Scars are a legion of the Adeptus Astartes, and they are based off the Yuan Chinese or the Yuan dynasty of the Mongolian Empire in real life. While they are often depicted in battle and by remembrances as bloodthirsty killers who laugh during battle and assault as savages, in reality they're actually very disciplined and professional troops and have a contained rage about them. Their savagery is contained, and they specialize in hit and run, lightning fast attacks, smashing the enemy apart. Yet they are also very much interested in poetry, calligraphy, understanding, art, play. They're very, very respected in terms of the finer things in life, the philosophy, the humanities. If you want a chapter, a legion of Space Marines who are just, one, Mongolian as all hell, but also incredibly disciplined and understanding, and these guys actually have a real care for human people. But when it comes to saving lives and preserving humanity, the White Scars will put humans before themselves, which again, a large chunk of the first founding chapters will do, with the except of, you know, the Iron Hands, because, you know, people fuck the flesh people. It comes from that sense of you protect your tribe. Your tribe is everything to the White Scars, and they see humanity as their tribe. As for their views on Jaghatai Khan, they believe that he is still alive and that he will return one day. They also believe that the Emperor will literally just stop dying and like just rise up, and they're preparing for him to come back to lead a new resurgence of the Imperium of Man. Yeah, that's the White Scars. As for their gene seed flaw, because each gene seed has a particular flaw or quirk, it's known as the Primarch Savagery. So if not kept in check, slowly and slowly their savagery will overtake them, and they get this type of bloodlust, as all they can think about is going very fast and hitting very hard. Again, kinda makes sense, you know, gotta have discipline, which is why they're so much so on the discipline side of things. You know, it's much more fitting to akin them to the Blood Angels in that sense, and how they are very deadly fighters and very like bloodthirsty in a sense, but they have to temper it with discipline. But yeah, that's the White Scars. Honestly, I think everyone has this feeling, and I got this feeling too. When you actually look into the White Scars, you realize, wow, these guys are pretty cool, and they've actually become one of my favorite legions. I mean, I love the Mongolian aesthetic. What I absolutely would adore if we had an Aztec aesthetic Space Marines, because Aztecs are just one of my favorite aesthetics, but these guys are great. Their lore is amazing. Jaghatai Khan is a boss. Like, he's so cool. They're a really good chapter. Yeah, so as always, I will link down below more stuff about the White Scars if you want to learn more about them. Let me know what you guys want down below in terms of formatting this type of video. Would you rather like one giant 3 long hour video, several smaller 1 hour videos, or just really small hyper condensed videos? Also, let me know down below which is the next legion we should cover. Any legion is open. Yeah, we've done the Alpha Legion and now the White Scars. Otherwise, thank you all so very much for watching. I have been General Bradley 101. You have been beautiful, awesome, and amazing people. Don't judge a book by its cover. Stay strong out there, boys and gals, and I will catch y'all next time. Dismissed, Rangers. Also, don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, and all the cheeky YouTuber things. Okay, alright, bye! You know, people often go on and on about how good the White Scars are, but at the same time, you gotta realize they are still kind of Mongolians and stuff. Like, they literally have a dude who mounts heads outside of their fucking palace. Like they're hardcore, but they're still Mongolians.